Great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting UnderTheHoodShow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Welcome to Under the Hood. Thanks for joining us.
Shannon Nordstrom here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What's caught your attention in the automotive world?
You think you got a problem with mice and rodents in your car? Not rats, but mice and rodents?
I hope not.
Funny how things go full circle with you, Russ.
Off air, yeah.
I'm eager to hear what you have to say.
Boy, every once in a while we get that call from somebody, a listener says, I've got mice in my car, and what am I going to do? Good thing you don't live in Australia right now, because we've got quite a few listeners down under there.
Mm-hmm.
They have their, approximately 15 to 20-year mice infestation going on.
Oh.
So about every 15, 20 years, they have mice, and right now they've got like 1 billion.
There's like a season for it?
Yeah. Chris will have to Google this
Like
to break.
cicadas?
Yeah. And they've got one farmer killed over 6,000 mice.
I'm glad you finished that sentence.
Last night.
I thought he was going to say that a farmer was killed by the mice.
No. Carried away. They carry away small children.
They got him up on their back, on his back.
They probably could.
Hee-haw.
Can you imagine that? They said they're just basically flooding everywhere. You walk out your door and there are
I would not like
mice.
that.
I would not like that either.
You see mice like you see, grasshoppers in your yard on a warm summer day. They're just
Is this true?
yes, it's right. Google it, Chris.
Chris, Google it.
Yeah, I will.
Not that I don't know you, but I mean, is it as bad as advertised, or is it something people that talk about?
Worse.
Do we have pictures of people like
Worse.
running from mice?
Yeah, when I Googled it, I went, that's worse than I thought.
Mice don't bother me. And of course, I've never been infested with them, but we had growing up, once in a while we'd have a mouse here and there. They don't bother me at all. They don't scare me. But rats, whole different story. Just the idea of it, and then when we had some construction at our building one time, and one got in through the pipes, and that's a nerve-wracking day.
Back down in Texas, we had the big rats you'd have in that part of town. I remember my grandpa caught one when I was about 6 years old, and it's still in my head. It was huge.
Well, you were 6 years old too.
Yeah, so I was small, so it was much bigger, but still, that was a big old
Okay,
rat.
I got to tell a rat story. Everybody else tell rat stories. We, when we were on the farm growing up, we had the corn cribbing, the lattice corn cribbing that you'd put into a circle, and then you'd fill it up with shell corn a lot of times on the cob. And when it would be time to move that out,
I love corn on the cob.
this was not the kind you want to eat at that point. But when we'd move that out, there was always large rats underneath that.
You didn't have one of those rat terrier dogs that goes after the
we
mice?
had farm dogs, and so it was an event. When we got down to the end, we'd all kind of gather around, and we had, can I tell this on the air? The dogs would have their job. They'd go after them, and they'd start grabbing them.
They used them for years in New York. I think they still do, right, Chris? They bring the dogs out, and there's a certain breed of dog, and they go after rats.
But our dogs would go after them and just tear them up. And we would tighten up our pant legs and have jeans on, and then like have clubbing devices. I just told that on the air.
Yeah.
It just came out, and we hope they didn't get away. We did not want them back.
Somebody out there wants to save the rats.
If you want to do that, I'm happy for you, but I'm not involved.
I looked up the mice plague. They're going, it's due to they had a drought and then they got rain, which let the explode. It happens every now and then. Yeah, it's
They got pictures?
yeah, sure. They sure do.
And what do you see? I'm going to come around and look.
Lots and lots of mice.
Yeah,
I got to get up and
no,
look.
they're not. Here. I'm off
Australia
that
has
now.
lots of things to feed with mice. You know, they have snakes and they have.
But wouldn't you think there's another infestation that would come either right after or during the mice?
They do have a cat problem.
Lots of
down
full
there.
cats. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Maybe
you'd
not
have like
now.
some bugs or like the whole
Yeah,
feces
that's-
thing
yeah.
and
Yeah, it's
Well,
not.
it's awful. I can
hantavirus
just
or whatever
imagine
it
all
is.
the.
Or
yeah.
I can imagine all the claims for car insurance.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Bill. Bill, save us here, will you? What's going on with your car?
I got a 7.4 liter engine from Shannon Nordstrom.
oh boy, thank you. Maybe.
Bye.
You're welcome. But it's a problem, Kyle. I got an issue with there's a frame that holds up the alternator that's attached to the intake manifold.
So like the bracket cage
Yeah.
that holds it.
Yes, the bracket is supposed to, it's held down by two bolts. But one of the bolts is closer to the carburetor is stripped. What shall I do? Get a different manifold or helix it or a JB weld or what do you got?
Well, you're going to put, like I said, I'm looking at Russ, he's making up and down head signals here. Probably just get a different intake. But the
Nodding. We
the-
call it nodding.
Is it-
Russ was nodding.
the alternator will create enough vibration and there's bouncing tension on that belt that you got to make sure you get that good and solid. We have had some success, retapping, drilling out the hole, putting a bigger bolt in. That's not unusual. That would be something to consider. The JB weld
JB Weld works too.
works
You can
wonders on a lot of things.
you can fill up the hole. You can wait for it to thoroughly dry. Then you can drill it and you can tap it, and it works really well. Actually, works a lot better than a helicoil in some cases because the helicoil you have to drill the hole bigger and then tap it and then screw it in and then they can screw back out. So I like to put the JB Weld in there, let it harden up, drill it back to the size it originally was. Because sometimes the bracket hole isn't big enough to get a bigger bolt through there and a helicoil and all that. So, yeah.
Couple different ways you could go about that, but if they were to no avail, then it would have to be a different intake manifold. Yeah, we've run into that occasionally. It's just you get stuff that age. We'll buy remanufactured engines from time to time, and they're clean, they're pretty, they're well done. But then you'll find one bolt that got broke off in a motor mount or in some other casting, and then before you know it, you're fighting with that and you didn't expect to. So it does happen, especially when this stuff gets a little bit older, and has seen a few in and out appointments.
866-594-4150. Bill, thanks very much for the call. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Brian. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Brian, what can we do for you?
Yes, thanks for taking my call. I've got a 1979 Dodge pickup D150. It's an express truck with a 360. Had trouble go down the road fine, starts up, but as soon as you go to accelerate, it would pop and misfire. Do the same thing like at a stop sign, cold or warm, and you put the accelerator down very much at all, it would misfire and sputter. Checked a lot of things. I had a used distributor, change that out, new coil, rotor, that type of thing. I had a used distributor, put that in, and still the same thing. Now it seems like I was suspecting maybe a timing chain that's getting worn or jumped a cog, but just wondering what you think.
It takes me back. I think
42-year-old car already.
the little red express truck. And our neighbor,
Right.
Bob Taylor in Michigan, had bought a brand new Little Red Express truck right there in
They were
79.
cool looking.
So now here we are all these years later, and I'm thinking,
All these years taken back.
yeah, and here's another truck. And it would be quite ironic if we got a call from, I'm sure Bob is long dead now, but he was an automotive worker way back then. He was, I don't know, he'd probably be almost 90 now, I would guess. But yeah, you just think of some of those things. And I remember, I can still picture that thing when they brought it home and how cool it was, this bright red Dodge over there. It's that Little Red Express truck on the wood on the back. And oh, yeah.
Stacks behind the cab.
Yep. So I think I'm right along the line that you are as far as mechanically thinking about timing. If you grab a hold of if you take that distributor cap off and you grab a hold of that balancer on the front of that engine, you should be able to move the balancer back and forth, either with some gloves, turning it by hand, or with a long breaker bar, and move it back and forth and see how far you have to turn the balancer each way to get it to move.
I've done
super sloppy or not?
Not really. I put a socket on the flywheel there and moved it as I was watching the distributor. There's a little slack, but it doesn't super sloppy. It's got about 90,000 miles. I don't know if the timing chain has ever been changed or not.
At 90,000 miles, you'd think it would still be at least hanging in there enough to keep it running.
Well, it should run, but it could have some misfire. But it'd be more, I would think, more at idle than down the road under a load. If it's
and this is under load. It starts up. I've changed timing different.
Does it have the electronic spark control on it?
It's got the electronic ignition, but not the lean burn or anything.
Okay. Lean burn. That is what I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's just got the standard ignition, which they've had for years.
Well,
and I've changed the distributor out with this is a new pickup coil, but a different pickup coil in the distributor. And that's no difference. Sometimes you get slop in the distributor shaft. That seems tight and everything. I didn't check the secondaries. I don't know if on the carburetor if that would make any difference or not, but the diaphragm looks good.
If it's running lean, that could cause that to misfire on acceleration. Usually Rich won't in the circumstance you're having anyways. But definitely an ignition miss could do it. And the only way to know for sure if you've got an ignition miss would be a handheld scanner that reads secondary ignition, so you can watch the spark pattern. And if you do that, then you can tell a lot of things from that watching it, because you can't plug a scanner into this thing without computer and codes and all that. But you could plug into that secondary ignition and actually watch the physical spark, the coil, the wires, the plugs, all of it, and see if you've got something that's not quite right. If all of that is good, then we would suspect a fuel issue. Like it's possibly running a little bit lean. You've got something that's keeping the carburetor from delivering the proper amount of fuel to it. And then, of course, the basic checks, your compression, leak down test on all 8 cylinders to make sure you don't have excessive leak down on there causing an issue with it. And then your base timing. There's a lot of, it seems pretty simple, but they can still be difficult even for a car that has no computer to it. They can be kind of tricky to, without a full computer on it.
Does that help you out there, Brian?
Compression. What's that?
Go ahead.
I did a compression test on it, just a regular compression test, and the right front was like 170, but the rest of the cylinders were all between 130 and 150. And fuel-wise, I did check the pressure. It's about 6.5 pounds. I did put a new fuel pump on it. That seems to be, while it's running, there's about 6.5 pounds. So that seems to be okay.
The next step I would do would be to do a leak down test on those cylinders too, and make sure they're all in good shape. See if you can verify that timing on there. Move that, run your balancer all the way around and verify that you've got, top dead center, both valves closed, that distributor pointing exactly at number 1, make sure everything's right where it's supposed to be, valve timing versus the engine timing as well. And then if you can get a hold of a handheld type, a portable ignition scanner, that would be huge for doing it while you're driving on the road. If it missed at idle, you could use a stationary scanner, which some shops still have, the older shops still have, sitting in the corner collecting dust. The one we use is a handheld type scanner you plug in that hooks up to the Snap-on unit, and it gives you the spark, shows you the spark curve.
Brian, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Yeah, it's like you said, it's straightforward, but it can still, they didn't all run perfectly in 79. I mean, we didn't have them straight. We still had problems.
We had a listener call, actually text me in. He listens a lot, Dale, and he reminded me, and I never thought of it. And I guess because I've never done it. Russ, maybe you've heard of this before, but he said we had, on a previous show, we had a Mopar, an older one that was OBD1 vehicle, and we were talking about testing it. And
paperclip?
Well, no, he was talking about you can cycle the ignition 3 times.
Or put a paperclip in there.
Yeah, and then it'll show up on your dash.
It'll blink.
It'll blink codes.
Huh.
And so that's something you can Google that and look it up. I did that. And there's another option for people that have those early OBD1 Mopars.
It'll blink like
Simon.
Like Morse code?
Flash codes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Pretty much every OBD1 will do that with a certain procedure of cycling the key or using a paperclip in the data link. It'll give you a code. It'll flash, and it flashes them 3 times. So it'll go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. For 12,
Okay.
11.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll flash as you go, and then it'll stop and it'll repeat, and it'll go through that cycle again. So
I
when
can
you're
only
back-
imagine how many times I'd have to watch that to make sure. Am I at the beginning? Am I, or is this the middle? Is this? Because I've
Was it
done
1,
that
2?
before, and I'm always confused. Did it start yet?
We did,
Or did,
shoot, right down. Okay. On. Okay. No, wait. Start over. Okay, I'm just going to turn it off.
Airbags used to have flash codes like that as well, and they would have a diagnostic chart. Like Ford, if you look up their chart for an 86 Ford, it'll say flash code number, and then it'll say scanner number, because a lot of times there were 2 different ones. So it would give you both. And if you're listening to this show now and you don't know it, don't realize it, or you've never heard it, we've been doing this for a long time. This is our 32nd year of this show.
Huh.
And we're also in a shop full time.
Right.
ASE Master Certified Technicians. This is what we're not just, talking because we want to get on the radio and talk. I mean, hey, it's for entertainment only. Remember
That's
that.
me.
But yeah, you can.
I'm not master certified.
We are in the shop every day working on cars, diagnosing cars, and it's not like we didn't work on the old cars. We did.
Right.
And we work on the new cars. So we've worked on everything from 1909 Model Ts all the way up to 2021 model vehicles, and everything in between.
There's a lot to learn between the beginning and the end and the middle.
And there's still so much that we have not learned, and even more that we've forgotten already.
It is interesting though when you say going back, that 79 Dodge, that seems like a base. It seems like here's all it can be. Here's what we know. But back then, we were still having that issue. I mean, we had to diagnose stuff and figure it out.
When we first opened our service center, was I think about the year I graduated high school. It was somewhere in there.
It was 89.
Yeah, right after that.
A couple years after.
And
hold on a second, real quick. Gary, we're up against a break here, so I'm going to keep you on, but we're not going to get to your call yet. So just hang on right where you are.
But the time when we opened that, the technician that my dad had hired, it's a picture I just remember seeing. The proud picture is standing in the bay with the huge Sun engine analyzer. And there's a different picture. He's looking at himself because there's a picture.
I've got one too.
Russ has got one too. But when we opened it, there's one up with Steve with the big analyzer. And that was, at the time, boy, you had to have that. At least you thought you had to have it.
Right.
I used that for a number of years.
Is that with like the vacuum tubes and the whole?
No, it was just a big cabinet.
Okay.
It was an oscilloscope.
Okay.
And you had to have that. But what did that cost?
Oh, that back then that was like $5,000.
But
That was
they
a lot of dough.
Yeah, they were expensive.
You can still buy those machines today, like on eBay, and you can pick them up for, depending on who's got it, $500 to $2,500.
They're kind of like a piano because nobody wants you get nowhere to store it.
Right. You want it? You can come get it. Does it look cool? Can we shine it up and make it look cool, or is it too
It's
big
long
to look?
gone.
Okay. I don't mean that one. I mean just in general.
I think we sold it for $100 on our 2003 auction.
It might have been.
Art and all the
Exactly.
cars.
It wasn't much. We were like, oh, this will bring money. No, it didn't.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you after we hear from Gary. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show, brought to you by Sturdivants.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. And if you like our Facebook page, join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com. You're entered. You could win a hoodie.
Like Jan Lynch from Prosser, Washington. Congratulations from all of us here under the hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, one of the country's GI Bill approved trade schools. A veteran point of contact at every campus can assist you in applying your GI Bill and other VA benefits to the cost of your tuition. Automotive, diesel, collision repair, motorcycle, marine, welding, and CNC machining. They've got campuses around the country and financial aid available. If you've been thinking about a solid career to get you trained for all the jobs that are open out there, think Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu. Get trained and go talk to our friends at CarMax. They're hiring experienced auto technicians for many of their 200-plus stores nationwide. And if you're looking for a job where you can make a great living while working on the cars you love, join CarMax. CarMax is the place for you. Join CarMax and grow your technical expertise and work with state-of-the-art tools and technology. Work on the cars you love. Join CarMax. Apply today at CarMaxAutotech.com.
866-594-4150. Now let's talk to Gary. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Gary, what can we do for you?
I've got an '03 TrailBlazer, and it's about a month ago, on 3 occasions over 2 days, the engine light came on that said that I'm losing engine power, and I went down to about 5 miles an hour and kept running, and I shut the key off, thinking I was have to call and get somebody to come tow me, turn it back on, it worked perfect. Did that 3 times over 2 days, and brought to my mechanic, and no code showed up that was applicable to what the deal was, and so nobody figured it out, and it hasn't happened since. But I'm a little worried about driving the vehicle very far.
Yeah, I can understand that. Sounds like your phone's losing a little power too there. So
Comes and goes.
yeah, thanks for being a hoodie and calling us. I remember Russ, a little flashback. You'll remember this too, I think. I know he will. He remembers more than me. Remember when we had our first of that generation, like an '02 Bravada? We had done the customer had done a body swap on it, and he couldn't get the throttle to work. And it was after hours. It was Mark that we bought all the NFP stuff from, and he brought it up trying to get that throttle to work on that vehicle. Mm-hmm. And that was, Russ had already had a bunch of experience with it. Like I said, we work on this stuff forever, but just trying to get that electronic throttle diagnosed because the vehicle had a different body put on with a different chassis. And I just remember watching the wheels turn, trying to figure out what was going on. But I mean, my first hunch is when you hear something like this on some of these GM vehicles, is that there's a good chance the problem is in that electronic throttle. Good chance, but there's other things too, or not?
Oh yeah, it could be any number of things like that. But that's a possibility for sure. That and the computer are 2 big things that cause them to just quit like that. And they're both throttle related. But I want to know what the codes are. If it had codes in there, and if they stayed in there, if it died and shut down. Did anybody read the codes, and were there any found?
Well, did you say that they didn't find any when you got there?
They found a code, but the mechanic said it was not related to that particular problem.
Sure. So you could have a code.
And I don't remember what the code was, but he said it wasn't related to that type of a problem. The mechanic's a pretty sharp guy, so.
Well, if you get a code that comes up for, say, evaporative emission system in the fuel tank, or catalytic converter failure of efficiency code, that's not going to be related to what you've got going on there while you're driving down the road. Now a restart, on a restart, that could be, if it only did it when you first started it, or if you've got an evap failure or something. So yeah, I can see where if a mechanic that's trained looks at that and sees what's going on, they would understand that that's not the same thing. So that makes it very difficult when you've got a car that won't continuously do something. It's a problem, because if you bring it into our shop and you say, every time I put this car into drive and accelerate to 30 miles an hour, it starts to fall on its face. Every time. Well, we're going to go out, we're going to connect our test equipment, and we're going to see it do it, and we're going to find out what's causing it. We're going to make the repair, and then we're going to verify that it's gone. But if you say it only does it once a week, there's no way to we're not even going to bother looking at it. It's just not, unless check engine light's on solid where we can see what's going on. But other than maybe just doing a quick scan, you're not going to find it. That makes it very difficult. And a lot of people don't understand that. And it's happening more and more now, because cars are becoming just loaded with everything electronic. But the intermittent failures are dramatically increasing. They're going up exponentially. So cars built from 2000 to 2004, they have a certain rate of failures that aren't consistent. So you're on the low end there. 2004 to 2013, they're a little more prone to doing that, where they'll do it just once a week. The 14 and up cars and trucks, man, we are seeing tons of those come in that are like, well, it does it like for 3 days, it'll do it, then it'll be a month, and then it'll be every day, just once during the day, it'll just shut off going down the road and won't restart. And then a few minutes later, it starts to restart. Well, how are you going to find that? But we're finding that incident occurring a lot more on vehicles. And it's sad when you got to tell a customer, if it doesn't do it, it can't be fixed.
Right.
And like, what am I supposed to do? It just shuts off going on the road. There's nothing you can do. You can take it into a dealership or an independent shop, and they may charge you $400 or $500 to look at it and say, couldn't find anything, give me the money. And then it does it as soon as you leave. Then that leaves you unhappy.
Right.
It's getting very difficult. But in your case, you're almost going to have a handheld scanner that you can carry with you. So this thing will clear out some codes of certain kinds. But if it dies before you shut the key off, I would scan it. I'd plug it in, read it, and you can pick up those handheld scanners that are usable on pretty much any car that's OBD2, and you can get some of them less than $100. That would be the way to go, to at least help the shop get an idea of where to look, where they could start looking. Because if they get a certain code, they might be able to go to that and say, "Oh, hey, look at the wiring; it's a little chewed up on that."
Perfect example. You had the Facebook contest. Did we choose a winner on that with my picture?
Yeah, we did. I'll get back to that.
Okay, but in that picture, what actually happened there, my son had grabbed his pickup, and he was heading back down to college to pick up some stuff he had there in storage yet. And as he was going out of town, all of a sudden he had a flashing check engine light. I wasn't there. I was out somewhere else, and so he called me, and I said, well, bring it back in. We'll hook the scanner up to it and see if we see anything. And if we do, maybe I can figure it out. I said, probably not. Most likely not. But we plugged my scanner into it that I got to hook to my phone, and we had a misfire on cylinder number 2, flashing check engine light. So I said, well, let's just physically look. So that's what I was doing when I lifted up the hood, as I was physically looking. And number 2 spark plug wire had pulled away from the coil and was laying loose. We've had another one on that same vehicle do the same thing.
Just fall off on some of those for some reason.
And so there it was hanging there. I said, okay, let's plug this back in. So to get that good access to it, you got to pull the oil cap off and lift the valve cover so you can get at the coils. And so I was plugging that back in that picture is what I was doing. But I was glad I had that scanner, is the point I'm trying to make, because if I would have looked under the hood, I probably would have saw it. But the first thing I did is plugged into it. It said misfire number 2. I looked like, oh, that's pretty obvious. Mm-hmm. And away we go. And so
if someone has the caption on that picture before today that says, plugging in number 2 coil wire, they're the winner.
Gary, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150.
On his call, you know, some of the later Impalas and things like that, and some of their GM vehicles, there was a big run on the throttle valves, the electronic throttle valves. And they've got a redundancy inside of them that lets them be a fail-safe. But if it gets one of the redundant little fingers in there damaged over time, eventually that'll start giving a reduced power signal. as a safety thing with that electronic throttle. So if I was going to throw darts and pick apart to throw parts darts with, that might be one to try. But there again, you could spend a couple $100 and have the problem back in 2 weeks. And then you're very, like Russ said, you're very frustrated at that point. So there are some shops you can talk to them and say, hey, what's the most likely culprit? And if you guys are in agreement that if you understand this is the most likely culprit, I can try this, but I'm not guaranteeing this is going to work. And, there's some that'll buy into that, but some that won't.
Right. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Chad. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Chad, what can we do for you?
Yes, I've got an exhaust manifold ticking noise. Can you imagine which one that one's from? 2013 Ram 5.7 Hemi. So, question is, do I go back to a manifold or do I go to a header?
New manifolds, new hardware. You put a header on there, you're going to have the same problem again. You're going to have the same problem with a manifold eventually, too, in a number of years. The headers tend to leak faster than the regular manifolds do, just because their construction. Unless you find a company that's got a amazing, super strong header that's much thicker than the original material, and I haven't seen one yet. I've seen some people put them on and they were disappointed because 2 years down the road they were leaking, or when they replaced the factory manifold with another cast iron manifold, they're not leaking right away. Make sure you use a good quality manifold. Don't get a really cheap manifold. We've used a whole lot of the Dorman products manifolds, and they've worked very well for us in our shop. We probably put on, I bet we put 30 pairs a year on, and we just haven't had a second failure. But we do. The Dodge is second. The Ford, the 5.4 Ford, is our number one manifold seller, and they can be a nightmare to replace. We had one the other day that was so bad that every bolt was rusted. Every bolt was going to bust off. The vehicle had close to 200,000 miles on it already and a slight bit of engine noise as well. And the customer just said, I know I'm going to be putting an engine in here before long. Let's just put a whole engine in it. And because the cost of two manifolds installed on one of those with all those broken bolts, you're getting up in a close to $2,000 by the time you get them all out, if you can get them all out of the heads. So at that point, you really got to consider. But this Ram, yeah, we had a 13 Ram a couple weeks ago. We had a 19 Ram that we're going to be working on here in another week with manifolds, and he questioned putting headers on it, and we said probably not a good idea, and they did some research and found out the same thing. Company said, well, yeah, if you're going to do any towing at all with it, expect to put another set on here in a couple years.
2019 already, huh?
Yeah.
Hello, Under the Hood Show.
Dialing for dollars.
You're on the phone.
Chad, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. From the Autotempest.com studios, all the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. All right, we got a question that came in on Facebook from Mavis. 2011 Cruze. When the car's driven slow, it seems to smother in a huge cloud of blue smoke, but on the highway, there's no smoke. And she said, code 82 PCV, question mark?
Do you think that's the Mavis from the old home filler up in Keep on Trucking Cafe?
I doubt it.
No?
I don't think so.
I don't think she'd have a Cruze.
Do you know that one, Shannon?
Yeah, I do. I don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do. But I think she wouldn't have a Cruze.
Yeah, I don't think she would.
Yeah. I watched a little weird TV and back old stuff. I mean, I grew up.
Chip Davis.
I'm not going to remember in detail.
Yes.
But
Shannon gets that from Art.
Pop culture references.
Got to get that from Art.
Maybe.
I know it. That's awesome. Okay, Chevy Cruze.
Don't ask me much more.
Mannheim Steamroller. Same
Chevy.
guy.
Yeah.
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 You lost me.
Fresh
now.
Air. 1,
Yeah.
2, 3. That's great music. Anyways,
I'm just sitting over here.
Classifieds.
I don't go that deep on.
I was thumbing through the
CW.
lines of the Chevy. Okay. Anyways, it's car stuff. It's all car related.
That
Come on.
Cruze has got to be a turbo.
It's
do
bad
that.
news. A Cruze with blue smoke is bad news.
It's got to be a turbo problem. If I'm wondering, or if it's not a turbo problem or a PVC problem where it's just pulling oil right into it at a volume that the catalytic converter can't burn it up and keep it out of the tailpipe.
GM, why did you build this car? I don't know. The Encore, the Cruze, they got this tiny little engine that
1.4 liter turbo, I'm
couldn't.
guessing.
Yeah, so not everyone does it, but a lot of them do it over and over and over. We've got one customer that had one 60,000 miles. He put a turbo on it himself after the factory had put one on at 30 under warranty, and then he put one on at 90, and now he's at 120, and it needs another one. He says, put one on it. I'm selling this car immediately. But then I saw something.
It's the 1.8 engine. I don't know if that helps.
In that, it's any of the turbos are
A
trouble.
challenge.
Yeah, and if you've got a non
Challenge.
if you got a non-turbo,
There was a
if you got a non-turbo and it's blowing smoke like that, you've got two possibilities. Either the engine's just toast because the rings are shot in it, and the pistons is just toast, or you've got a valve cover issue where they're pulling oil through that. Usually the valve cover is not bad enough to pull that much oil, but then Chevy went along and they built the City, City Connect, City Express, whatever that little
Transit Connect. No, that's Ford. I got to go the other
Ford.
way. Yeah, exactly. The Chevy.
Very similar.
Yes.
It's taller but narrower. And I saw one the other day and I said, you know what, that looks like a giant Cruze. I'm going to Google it because we hadn't seen one in our shop.
We've dismantled a couple of them.
I pull it up. Guess what's in there for an engine?
Same thing.
Why would you do
Well, it's
that?
the same thing that Ford did with their little Transit where they put like
But it held up.
the Focus motor in there.
The Transit seemed to hold up. Thus timing belt broke. But I mean, that was seemed to be a pretty decent vehicle. Now all the people are going, I thought they hated Fords and loved Chevys. It's like, no, we're an equal opportunity, disliker
Hater.
for certain models of vehicles that they build with problems. Now, we do have a few customers that own the Cruze that drive them a little differently, and they haven't had a problem yet. I haven't seen one with a lot of miles without a problem, but we've got some with under 100,000 miles that are still working fine. And I said, I don't know. They asked me, well, how long can I drive this car? I just don't know.
Russ, I will tell you, we've dismantled quite a few of them that are wrecked, that have got 120, 130, 40,000 miles that seem to be working good yet. So they're not all horror stories, but there's plenty of them.
They can, but that turbo is a number one selling.
If it's a turbo car, check the turbo. Many GM cars have had the bolt and they've put out about the positive crankcase vent in the valve cover. You got to
Fords.
Check that out because they've integrated it into the valve cover. And if it gets all gummed up, plugged up, the next thing it does, it starts pulling the oil. So you got to check that. But usually I don't know. It takes a lot for that to get enough volume where you'd see blue out the tailpipe.
You disconnect the tube between the turbo that runs out to the engine, the intake air to the engine. That's where you take it off because the oil, if it's built up inside the turbo, leaking at the seals, will exit the turbo and head towards the intake manifold through that tube. But if it's completely covered in wet oil, turbo shot. If it's dry, it's definitely not the turbo.
866-594-4150. Another question that came in from Chuck on Facebook. Is there any way to use the transmission out of a four-wheel drive in a two-wheel drive on a 99 to 06 Chevy truck?
Yes.
Yes, you have to take and get the rear output shaft switched and then get a different extension housing on the back of the transmission, and you can make that change. That is which way did he ask?
Can you go from
No, I'm curious here.
Trans out of a four-wheel drive into a two-wheel drive?
I'll just about guarantee you that he was trying to do a street rod or a rat rod or a cruiser that put an LS swap in. I'm just about bet money.
All right.
And because we've always got people asking. And in our market, when you try to find the 4L60 or the 4L80 trannies that you need to put behind them to make it an automatic setup, you can seldom find a two-wheel drive because we're in four-wheel drive country. So the four-wheel drives are popular because they go bad and people need them all the time because they get overworked, but they're available. The two-wheel drives are just not available that often, and so people are looking for them. And so we have taken a number of them over the years down to our friends at J. Agee Automatic Transmission. There's lots of good tranny shops around, and they've switched out the output shaft. They got to break the tranny down, switch out that output shaft, and the extension housing, and you can turn that into a two-wheel drive, yes.
it's the last part you come to when you take the trans apart.
Okay.
So you're all the way in the back. So if you've got a used transmission, now is the time to upgrade it. If you've got a pretty new transmission, you should be able to take it apart, couple seals, put it back together. It used to be about a $400 swap project when you had a transmission that was in good shape and just needed a few seals to put the thing back together so it wouldn't leak, because it was new. Because we were taking ones that had like 2 miles on them, 5 miles, and taking them apart. If you do have one, I would say if it were me and I had one with, let's say, 90,000 miles on it, I just wanted to change that shaft, knowing that I was probably going to have to update it anyways inside, I would probably sell that transmission as a complete and just buy a complete working two-wheel drive wherever you got to get that. If you're looking at car-part.com or something like that, to purchase it and then sell it outright, because they're selling right now. They're a pretty hot commodity. Or if you're going to go buy one and have it changed because you can only find a four-wheel drive, just buy one with a ton of miles on it so you get it cheap, and then just pay to rebuild it and have them swap that shaft while they're rebuilding it.
I always assume on these questions, in my mind, when I picture them on the phone or typing it in, that they have the two sitting there. I picture them like in the garage, and oddly enough, it's like a Friday night. So when they ask during the show, I'm picturing it being at night, and they're sitting there talking about it.
Is there a couple beers sitting there?
Yeah. I got this one, and the radio's on in the background, and then they call.
It's the Under the Hood Show podcast is what's on in the background.
Yeah.
You know what gets me is back in the 80s, we would take apart transmissions. We'd take our Turbo 350, a Turbo 400, a 204R, 700R4. We would pop them out of the car after we'd kill them drag racing these things all over town and scatter the parts all over the floor and whatever workbench we had, clean them up with a can of aerosol brake cleaner, buy the trans kit from our local auto parts store, put it back together, and they'd work. Pretty much every time they would just work. And yet now we wouldn't dream of completely disassembling even a Turbo 350 in our shop and scattering the parts all over the bench and putting it back together, because you got to have a pretty clean area, and you got to be doing that all the time and have a dedicated spot for those things. And a lot of it has to do with the other projects you're working on at the same time in the shop, because where we were at, shop stayed pretty clean because the garage was fairly clean. We swept the floor and nothing got moved, and it was one thing. But now in a shop, you got everything else going on. You got wind blowing through, you got dust and dirt, and I don't think you could guarantee that you're going to have a good product for the customer. But a lot of people are very intimidated when it comes to transmissions. But those old ones like that, there's a lot of stuff there, but there's really not that much to it. I would say it's similar. If you can rebuild a quadrajet carburetor, you could probably tear down a Turbo 350 or 400 or even a 700R4 and put it back together. It's about the similar number of parts.
Huh.
When he references the old transmissions, I remember a couple of the old timers that used to come out and get parts, and I'd be working the parts counter, and I just picking their brains and listening to their things they would say. And about certain vehicles, about certain parts, there's always something that they say. Mm-hmm. But the one guy would always say, that 727 Chrysler tranny, I think you could run gravel through it and it would keep working. It was just he was a Chrysler guy, and he talked how solid they were, and he was trying to compare to the new trannies that just don't take any abuse and all that stuff.
The C4 trans.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Hour 2 is coming up, 866-594-4150. Thanks for listening to the Under the Hood Show.
To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, Hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. I had an experience yesterday that made me think of you guys. We were driving, we were on the road, and we've had hazy sunshine with all of the fires. Our hearts go out to you folks that are dealing with.
A couple weeks ago, it was so bad. We walked out of the studio the first time we saw the smoke, and we went, is something on fire in the parking lot?
Should I be checking something?
Yeah, it's just devastating. But driving in that smoke yesterday, and it was 90 plus degrees, and I was out on the interstate, and it like triggered a memory with me, and I was trying to figure out what is this memory? Because it was really strong, one of those things where you go, almost like, am I having deja vu? And you try to come back to it to see if you still have that thought. And it dawned on me, it reminded me of summer when I was a kid, when we would go, as little kids, we would walk a couple blocks to the busy street near my house, and we would just watch cars, which seems, you know what I mean.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, we used to go watch cars on this busy street, and the pollution and the heat, I remembered, because we've talked in the past about how in the 70s, it was gross to be next to a busy street. We'd come home covered in like exhaust dust, I just remember that. And that's what it was like yesterday. I was like, oh, reminds me of being a kid and all of the exhaust that used to just linger in the air. You could see it as you'd go past streets. You could see the like fog that was hanging over the streets. And that's what I was thinking of yesterday. It reminded me of it totally.
There's a smell driving down the road not too long ago with my wife. She's like, wow, that car really smells gassy. And I looked and I said, that car's got a carburetor on it. That's why it smells that way. And they all smelled that way. They're classics. It's now, since there's so few of them out there, I mean, there's thousands of them, of course, but there's so few of them that it's nostalgic. When I'm going on the road and I smell gas, I look around and make sure it's not I'm like, oh, that's fuel injected. They got a leak. They better fix that. Of like, oh, look, cool, a 67 Mustang or a Camaro or a 72 Buick Riviera that maybe Rick from Minnesota is driving.
Yeah. Rick, let's talk to Rick. Rick, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hey, guys. Good talking to you. I like your show very much. Listen to it all the time.
Thank you.
Hey, I got a 1972 Buick Riviera. God, I've had it for years, but I haven't done a whole lot of work on it. It's all natural. It's got the big motor in it. It's got 50,000 miles on it. My problem is with it is, when I get it runs really good, but then you take it for a drive, cruise around, and you shut it off, and you want to go back to start it again. That thing will not start. You got to leave it set for a couple hours or more before that thing will take off again. I was just wondering, what's your thoughts on, what I got to check and see if I can get that corrected?
Have you done any checks at all, like to find out if you've got spark when it's not starting?
Well, we've put a new distributor, the whole distributor, and then coils and everything. That's all brand new. But I guess as far as, when it started, I guess I really haven't checked to see if there is spark when it's hot, I guess.
If you've replaced the whole distributor, you probably fixed the problem. If it was a new one, those cars had problems with the pickup coils down in the bottom of the distributor, and they would open up and not start when they'd get hot. They could make it a really difficult restart. So that's a possibility. But if you swap that out and it did it right away after, probably not that. I'm guessing from our experience with those cars, I mean, we've seen lots of those come through. That carburetor may be leaking inside. So you shut it off, and it starts dripping down, and the fuel bowl starts to empty. So you have two problems now. You've got a flooded engine because you've dripped a lot of the fuel out of the bowl. And then you have a fuel bowl that's empty. So you go to crank it, and it may try to fire a little bit, but it's flooded. And then once that clears out, you don't have any fuel in the bowl, so it doesn't start. And then you let it sit a while. You try to crank it again, fills up the bowl a little more. You shut it off, try to crank it again, and then it finally goes and runs like it should. What we do in a lot of those situations is we will run the car, and before it has a chance to drain down, we'll take the 4 bolts out of the carburetor and we'll raise it up and stick something between the engine and the carburetor, like a little piece of 2x4 or something on each side to hold it up. And then we'll shine a flashlight in there and look at it and watch it. And if it gets wet on the bottom of the carburetor inside right by the main jet area and is dripping down, then the carburetor needs to be rebuilt. But that's very possible. That's what's going on. That's a fuel issue you've got. So to try to start it, when you shut it off next time and you let it, because if you shut it off and then try to restart it just a couple seconds later, it probably starts right up, doesn't it? But after you let it sit for 10 minutes. Yeah. So here's what you do. Shut it off, wait about 10, 15 minutes like you normally would when it's not going to crank. Hold it all the way to the floor, keep it there, and then crank it. And it should start after a few seconds. Then once it starts and clears out, let off the throttle so you don't blow it up. But
it's going to stumble a little bit.
That'll tell you, if it's and it's going, that tells you that you've got a carburetor leaking down in there, which isn't the end of the world. You can rebuild it or buy a rebuilt for it. We've had a couple really cool cars for old cars. Call them the 72 Riviera, the 1979 Little Red Express truck. Don't forget about our partners at BerkeleyOneClassics.com because they do all that. They've been with us longer than any other partner, and they have really great coverage, and they insure our own vehicles. So
when I was a kid, our neighbor had about a 72 Riviera.
I want to ask him, what color is it? Don't tell us yet.
Okay, don't tell us.
I think it's gold.
I think it's that greenish, silverish greenish color.
Yeah, I think it's the green. What color is it, Rick?
It's that dark rusty brown. Real popular.
We'll call it gold.
No, that wasn't gold. No, they had a gold.
No.
But it was brown.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's a fun car. A lot of neat lines on that car.
My neighbor Terry Sager had one, and he thought it was the coolest car, cool classic car we made fun of him for it because it was an old man's car. I'll go out publicly and say we were wrong. He was right. He was just ahead of the time. He was on it. Do they make?
You're just older now.
And now, yeah, that's it. That's totally it. I'm fulfilling my own idea at the time. I'm an old man who thinks it's cool.
I can picture all those old Rivieras, the big boat tail Rivieras, and the monsters. Oh,
I hope Rick doesn't listen to this next part, but can I buy that rear glass now aftermarket? Do they make it?
Ooh, they might not make it. I bet they don't make it at all.
Because that was always my fear. I was so worried about that when I was a kid.
I think you'd be looking for one in a salvage yard, recycling yard that has older vehicles. You'd be looking for one. I know there's a friend of mine that restores a lot of cars, and there are companies out there that make classic glass. Okay. And so it's not unreasonable to think that there'd be one available. But like most of those things, there's got to be enough demand to stimulate the build. And if that's there, then the amount of demand and how many pieces they could put out is what's going to regulate what it's going to cost.
Right.
And then shipping and handling is a real deal. I mean, that's used to be when you talk about buying something, it's going to be this and it's going to be $37 shipping and handling. No. Nowadays, shipping and handling is a real deal. You got to know what's it going to cost to package it? What's it going to cost to put it on the truck? What's that rate going to be? Do you need this kind of delivery? Shipping and handling is a whole nother business.
You know what else we're seeing now is, so we called, ordered a part yesterday, and they said it's not available right now. It's national back order. We don't know when it's coming in. It's $179 today. You go, okay, great. I'll buy it. And it's $179 today. It gives you kind of a general idea. But once it comes in and we have it in our hand, if it's $289, that's what you have to pay to get it. You're not getting it, once we have it and we pay for it, we'll give it to you for that same price, but it may go up. So we're like, great. So we're having to start passing that on now.
When I just walked out in the hallway now to use the restroom, our salesman was just having a little bit of a challenge because something that he had quoted 3 weeks ago, now they're calling to buy it, and the price is not the same anymore, and the one was gone that they wanted. And
that's where we're having to learn. When we quote those things today, we have to say, if you want to buy it right now, I'll go ahead and get it. If not, it could cost more, or you can pay for it today, but you may have to pay the difference when it comes in. You just tell them up front, and hopefully they remember.
We're going to take a break. 866-594-4150. You're listening to the Under the Hood Show.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Clint. Clint, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hi, guys. I've got a 2015 Acura MDX that is making a strange little flutter noise, or I would first have described it as when a jack, when you're putting on your tire bolts and it gets tight and the wrench flutters or clatters. And it only lasts for about a second, maybe even half a second sometimes. It's pretty subtle. If the radio was on, you probably wouldn't hear it. And it's in the front left wheel region. And it only happens around 30 to 40 miles an hour. The other day we drove it right at 40 down Southeastern, and it did it like 3 times for us in 2 minutes. But normally you can't get it to do that, and our mechanic couldn't get it to do it at all, so you know how that goes.
We do, we do know how that goes.
The only other thing is, the only other thing, probably coincidence, but I got the tranny fluid changed out at 85,000, and I don't remember hearing the sound before that. I'm not saying one thing leads to another there, but I just thought I'd throw that in.
Well,
that happens when I pick my car up from you at the shop, Russ. I always hear sounds I'd never heard, and I always think of that you did it. But it's usually just that I always have the radio on. But when I pull out, I don't, because you guys have turned it off, and that's when I notice those sounds.
Yeah. So I'm wondering. I'm with what you described. I'm kind of almost going back to the what could it be if you had the trans fluid changed that could cause that, because it's only 35 to 40 miles an hour, not when you're ever stopped or just starting the car up or revving it up. Makes me think maybe when they were under that shield they have to take off underneath that lower shield, or pushing back on the one in the driver's inner fender there by the trans, if it's not just fluttering because of wind going down the road, wind and vibration and just airflow and things, and it's causing that shield to.
He had it into the shop. You would have eyeballed that right away, though, wouldn't you? Or
not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily if something moves back into place.
They did say that they tightened something down, like a shield or something. I don't remember really. Is there only one shield? Maybe they just did one and not the other? Or?
There's several. You've got the plastic ones under the front. There's a few of those. And then there's the metal exhaust shield as well, too, which would have nothing to do with the trans, but it can still rattle and give you that buzzing kind of noise.
That was a great noise you made. You did that really well.
Russ, just now?
No.
Oh,
Clint did.
I know the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you described it enough that I even know the noise you mean.
I've been practicing that for a few weeks now. So
I would give it a physical inspection underneath to make sure that the inner fenders, the bottom turtle shell, as they call it, that they may have had to access to get at the.
You make a very good point, because I said when you eyeball it, well, no, because it only happens at 35 to 40 miles an hour, so it might look normal all the other time.
Well, and I've seen it before, too. I've done it myself. That's why I've seen it before. When you're putting those plastic shields back together, there's an order of operation that one kind of usually overlaps the other one, and sometimes there's fasteners that are unique to push in quickly and some that are bolts, and if you don't get it all back just the way it can, you can get a plastic piece that's not all of a sudden affixed. And then I've had friends that have seen all of a sudden, like, hey, your inner fender's against your tire. Oh, we just did this. And they never got it straightened out. Remember when you had your problems with the Prius, when you'd break stuff underneath, you try to tie one together and then the other one would come loose?
Yep.
We're going down that road, but otherwise, if the noise is more like an electronic actuation of something, which it doesn't sound like it is from what you described, then you got to get going down a different road. But it sure sounds like something physical.
Does that help you out there, Clint?
Yeah. And it doesn't, it really did. It let me know also, guys, thanks. It doesn't sound like anything serious. You could take a trip with it and deal with it later or something.
I don't think so. And if you don't have any lights coming on, or you don't feel any difference in the way the vehicle drives or runs or shifts or brakes, anything physically different.
No, that's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all good.
I think you got to get a little physical inspection there.
Clint, thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. By the way, that drives me crazy as a regular consumer, as a regular car owner when my car, and the Prius is a good example. It happens on my Solstice too. Just when the parts, the whole thing is falling apart because there's only a half an inch of plastic between the part and the part that's holding it on. And it's like, I have to replace the whole bottom half of the front of my car because they made plastic a half an inch too small.
And there's nothing cheap about some of that stuff.
No, not at all.
It adds up in a big hurry. I had one come loose recently on a Nissan that we fixed up, and next thing you know, the kids were driving. They never noticed it, but the tire had rubbed a hole right through the liner, and that one plastic piece that was about 24 inches long was $78.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there was nothing available that I had used that I could find. So I mean, that stuff adds up in a hurry.
I have lots of extra parts in my garage
Do you?
that I just went, I'll save it, I guess, but I'll just hang it on the ceiling.
Change the subject back to that older car we had the call on, the 72 Riviera.
Mm-hmm.
You took off on a tangent about the back glass.
Yep.
My dad he's listening to the show as he's out working and doing his stuff.
Yeah.
And he calls in at the break on our live show. And I'm like, he doesn't ever call me during the break. What could be so important? If I got an emergency out there, because he's out and about everywhere at our business.
Right.
You could find my dad anywhere. He shows up at Russ's shop all the time. He shows up in the dismantling shop. It's kind of like, where's Waldo? We've always said we should have an electronic tracking board of where Art's at, but we just never know where he's going to show up at. But so he calls me, so I'm like, I better answer that. And I'm like, hey, Dad, what's up? You know, I didn't say it like that, but what's going on? And he's like, hey, he goes, that call you were just on the show, I'm listening to the radio. He goes, about that back glass on the Riviera? He goes, I've got two of them leaning against the back side of the man cave. I'm like, nobody wanted to buy a glass, but he was pretty pumped to let everybody know that if you need one, he's got a couple of them.
Let's talk to Jay. Jay, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Yeah, hi. I have a Chrysler 300 06 two-wheel drive. I'm just getting an enormous amount of knocking going down the road. If the road has any roughness to it or rolling to it, knock, 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 knock. So I've replaced the bushings for the sway bar. I've replaced the links for the sway bar. No luck so far. I hear chatter that it could be the tension rod, or it could be maybe ball joints, or it could be internal to the shock. I'm just looking for tips before I go tearing my whole front suspension apart in frustration.
If you've done
any ideas?
Yeah, if you've done both the sway bar end links and the sway bar bushings, check your lower control arm bushings as well. Make sure that those are not worn at all. And also the subframe mounts, the subframe to the body. If those are worn, then they can cause a little creaking. But we do replace a lot of struts on those cars for this kind of noise. It's very common. When they get close to 100,000 miles, they're typically clunking and rattling and banging up in the front. And we replace them as a whole complete assembly, which is the whole thing with the bearing and everything in them.
Kind of money's that cost on a?
I don't know what they are today. They're probably different than yesterday.
Yeah,
because the price changes on everything. I know I quoted out a pair of brake rotors to somebody like 2 months ago, and they were $31 a piece. And we went to do the job Friday last week, and I said, "Hey, the price has changed. Here's what they are," and they turned out to be like $78 a piece. So that's a drastic increase for what a lot of them are gone up 30-40%, but that was a lot. And they're like, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And I'm like, "Well, if you want to do them, that's what they're going to cost." So struts could be a little more right now.
I had
a check and see.
I've talked a little bit on the air about my 06 Range Rover project, and it had a clunk at a certain temperature, noise, suspension noise. We tried sway bar links because they were affordable.
Yeah.
Just 'cause it was coming from that type of an area, and our good friend Jim Tramby at Classic Imports had clued me in that it could be the active sway bar. As they get older, they'll start making some noise, and so I bought a $1,200 active sway bar. Nothing used around that I could find that I trusted with the miles and stuff. But when we got to the part, that was the problem. But also the sway bar bushings, the ones that hold the bar, had actually eaten into the shaft from lack of lubrication over the years, and get a little bit of dirt inside there. And so there was noise coming from there too. So, all those bushings have an opportunity to give you noise.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. The phone number to reach us, 866-594-4150.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150 from the Autotempest.com studios. All the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and you join the Hoodie fan club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Kelly Pringle from Brainerd, Minnesota. Congratulations from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute and everybody here at Under the Hood. Wear that hoodie proudly. UTI, Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu. They can help you get trained to get into an automotive job. And it's not that easy just to walk in and do it. I mean, you can get those jobs, but you're not going to get the best pay. You're not going to have the best choice of what you're going to do. If you've been trained by somebody like Universal Technical Institute, you're going to know things. You're going to know how to work on the new electric cars, even if you hate that the electric cars are coming out. If you're a mechanic, technician, maybe you want to be working on those things because it's something new and it's coming out. But a lot of people, remember how people didn't like computers, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
In the late 80s, they're like, I'll never work on computers. It's stupid. I'm not going to take computers in school. Yeah. Guess who took a little computer class before they quit school? Or it was Bill Gates? You know? Yeah. So
learned a couple things.
Steve Jobs, maybe they learned a little bit in their off-brand computer class back in the 70s. Who knows? But I don't know for a fact. But I'm just guessing it's a possibility. So hey, you get a little training, you can do that.
And think if you had started a couple of years ago, what you'd be now.
Yeah, just stepping stones to get to the next step.
And there's all different levels of training at Universal Technical Institute, from shorter classes to longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever fits your budget, even though they've got some advanced
great financial aid
available. You might want to do something a little less, something a little more or less time. And once you get trained up, our friends over at CarMax, they're hiring. You've heard us talk about CarMax now for, I was thinking CarMax like you.
CarMax, and I thought like Carniac, the Johnny Carson skit. Where was Carnac?
However you remember it, it's CarMax, and they've got locations all over the place. CarMax is hiring experienced auto technicians for many of its 200-plus stores nationwide. And if you're looking for a job where you can make a great living while working on the cars you love, CarMax is the place for you. Join CarMax and grow your technical expertise and work with state-of-the-art tools and technology. Work on the cars you love. Join CarMax. Apply today at CarMaxAutotech.com.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Robert. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Robert, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I have a 09 Town and Country minivan, and the radio navigation system keeps going on and off all the time, and was wondering if we can replace it with an aftermarket without having to do a VIN
matchup. Yeah, there. I know what you mean.
These newer vehicles, the entertainment systems have gotten to be a big part of the vehicles. They've integrated more things into them. You know, as far as it started, would I be safe to say one of the first things that integrated into the car would have been speed compensated volume? That's kind of where it started. And it's just went beyond that, because now you've got data links going into your radio that's connected to many different things. But yet the aftermarket has done a good job of keeping up with some of that. And Russ's good friend Daryl at Audio Playground, they've done a lot of things together over the years. I've gotten to know Daryl really well, and Patty and the crew down there. And when you go in there, it is quite amazing to look what is available that you can replace a factory unit with. And they make the mounting kits and the adapters to make everything work. And so, yes, it is possible. Now, there are certain ones, though, that you run into. It's like, not that particular one, but as a rule, they've got most of them covered.
That's for sure. So you should be able to just pull that out, replace it with an aftermarket unit of your choice. You can get one with or without navigation. They've got some really fancy ones that are nice that'll do things like Apple CarPlay if you've got a phone that is an Apple phone, or you've got a Android-based phone like a Samsung or something like that, and you want to integrate that into your radio
a chance
as well.
to get some upgrades of some things that weren't available in that 09 yet.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or in that vehicle ever.
Right.
So there's all sorts of stuff available to do that, and you don't have to worry about the VIN at all. It's pretty seamless for a professional shop like that to put it in and integrate it.
But there are a number of people, too, that want to keep it factory, and that's where you can get a quality replacement unit, a recycled original equipment unit, and make sure you buy one with a warranty, but they can be reused in another vehicle, and you can reprogram that VIN to match the vehicle it needs to be in. So you have to either have the equipment yourself or spend a few dollars with somebody to switch that over, which can be a little bit of the frustrating part if you do get one that kind of does the same thing, because it can happen.
Right.
Because like for us, I think of us when we test a vehicle in our inventory department, they power everything up. We push some buttons, check it, make sure it's working correct, take a picture of it working, take a video of it, but we're not running it for a half hour.
Right.
We're not running it for an hour with the heater on. You're not running it through all those paces that sometimes show up where a problem is going to come. And that's why like anything, you get a warranty on it, but you can be out that installation cost sometimes, which can be frustrating. But if your savings are really, really big, it still equates out. So car-part.com would be a good place to look for something like that too, if you want to find a matching original equipment unit to replace it with.
Robert, thanks very much for the call.
Yesterday, Vic Jaco, our affiliate liaison that goes out and accumulates radio stations for us and newspapers. We do a newspaper article across the country as well, too, every week. And he mentioned something that I just found ironic after that call. He said, Russ, I listen to the show every week, and it's often where it's kind of interesting when you say, yeah, we've got one of those in the shop right now we're working on. And I find that ironic after talking to him yesterday and hearing him say that. And I was like, you're right, we do. I just put a radio in the 09 Town and Country yesterday, factory one, pulled his out and put another one in, and I was just in the middle of getting a code for it. I got to go back today and get the code for it and enter that so the customer has the radio working. But that happens a lot, but I suppose that's because we work on such a variety of vehicles at our shop. I mean, we could do a whole show on what happens at our shop weekly and not even talk about the listeners' cars. We have so much stuff there. It's crazy. With just a few of us up there, we get a lot of variety. We see a lot of things. The thing that we have here on the show that has the most in common with our shop, the number one question, I don't know about what you guys think, but on the radio show and that we have in the shop, what do you think it is? If you we got a lot of different ones from different things, but let's say per capita, the one that comes up more times than any other single question.
Buick Riviera back glass.
That's the one. I don't think I've ever had that up there. No. My battery goes dead overnight. What's wrong with it? I have 2 in the shop right now for a battery goes dead overnight. How many calls do we get on the show about my battery goes dead overnight?
We have a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yep. And they're very difficult to answer.
As far as unique calls go, that would probably be the most common one too. And the other thing we get up there too is we talk about oil changes and timing chains wearing out and stuff like that. And it just amazes me. Now, people on our radio show here don't often tell us how long they go on an oil change. They go, well, it might be a little over. And Chris, I've looked at your car. Yeah. Sometimes it's over, but not very often.
I got one I got to get in. I probably need to look at the number on.
Yeah.
Well,
it doesn't matter. You don't need to know because he'll tell you, and then he'll.
I do need to know.
I for some reason, I like to tell people when they come in and I look in their oil change. It's usually over 3,000 miles over what it's due. So if it was due at 3,000, it's at 6. But I just had one yesterday that came in, and it was 13,000 some miles on the oil change, and it was blown up. They said, well, I've been adding oil to it, to topping it off. It's like the longer you go. So
eventually it's all new.
It actually isn't. So if you take a brand new car and you drive it and it starts getting low on oil because you've driven it that far. Now, brand new car, it's going to take a while, but you drive it until it starts getting low. If you start topping it off, well, the oil that's in there is going to start getting thinner and sludges will start to build up, but it'll actually start using that oil faster because it's thinner and it'll look like it's using oil when it's not. But a couple things happen. And during the COVID, we had a lot of, it's on right now, but with a lot of these cars being parked and people from working from home, a couple things they don't realize. They're like, big question that started coming up, almost as big as batteries. Well, should I change my oil? I don't drive the car. You should change the oil, and here's why. Oil filters are made of cardboard. The cardboard doesn't last. The cardboard falls apart. We had a couple of them come in our shop that had been sitting over a year. They'd only been driven about 1,000 miles, so they didn't think they needed to be changed, but the light was blinking. Oil light was blinking. It turned out the oil filters, when we took them off, the cardboard was falling out of them. So that can ruin an oil filter, so you can't go that long. They do make oil filters, certain ones that say extended drain. They're specifically made for that. And they make oils that are made to be fully synthetic, that are made to go longer periods of time and not break down as fast. Those are important things if you're going a long way, but it does amaze us sometimes. We did have, I think the record we had for a customer was, and we can laugh with him, Jeff. It's Shannon's my friends, but he had 26,000 miles on his oil.
It wasn't his. He had to pay the bill.
Right. He had to pay the bill.
It was one of his siblings.
Yes, but
or one of his kids.
But the car itself only had like 35,000 miles on it, so it survived it. It was almost empty. It was starting to rattle when they brought it up. But if that car had already had 100,000 miles on it, it would have killed it. But it's
that car survived that and a tree falling on it, and that car was
and
tough.
kept going. We had one. We don't typically do body work at our place, but we've done a few where if we've got a color matched part, we'll throw it on just to help somebody out. But I was looking at one the other day. We did the Toyota Avalon for Doug.
Okay.
And or Doug Clark, and they had wrecked it pretty hard in the front, but we had all the parts over there. They were all bolt-ons, so we put it on. I went, that thing actually looks pretty nice. Saved it, kept it going on the road. Now it's just turning almost 300,000 miles on that thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
The Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. From the Autotempest.com studios, all the cars, one search. This is the Under the Hood Show. Here's a call that came in on Facebook. Steven says 98 Dodge Ram 1500, 5.2 Magnum, 150,000 miles. He's on a good start right away. I like all the info. Have to crank starter for 30 seconds. Starts and runs fine after that. It used to start fine. What should I look for?
When he says crank start, I think of my Model T, and I'm cranking it. If I got to crank that thing for 30 seconds, my arm is going to be shot.
Different kind of cranking, thank goodness. I'm glad they've modernized cranking.
Since the 20s?
Yeah.
Teens?
If you ever get a chance to crank start one, don't push down on it. No, never. Only pull up. Because pulling up, it can pull out of your hand and you can let go. Pushing down, it'll break your arm right off.
That's all I think about now. You mentioned that a while ago, and that's all I think about.
Oh, that's not good. I had it pushed back on my arm one time, and it was sprained for a month. That was when I was a kid, so I recovered. Now I'd probably tear something bad.
Well, on this 98 Ram with a slow start like that, it's probably, we don't have all the details, but after sitting, there's a good chance that fuel is bleeding back and he's losing pressure. Mm-hmm. And, that pump is probably starting to go. It's a good chance of that.
I think so. I think it's very possible that's what's going on, is that the pump is bleeding down. You can check that and verify it by checking fuel pressure. You put a fuel pressure gauge on it, turn it off, and watch it. If it sits for an hour and the gauge goes down to 0, it's definitely bleeding back. It could be leaking past injectors as well, fuel pressure regulator, but more than likely it's the tank end, and you can verify that by blocking off the return line and finding out where, verifying exactly where that fuel is going. But most often it's a fuel pressure that causes that hard start.
This brings me back to when we were talking earlier about the Riviera and the feeling I had yesterday that was almost like a deja vu. I had the same thing. I remembered when Terry, our neighbor, had the Riviera. My brother had, I believe it was the Pinto.
Put in new transmission often.
No, he's going to get mad. It was the Maverick. Ooh.
Oh.
That's a big, that was a terrible mistake. Right animal.
Love the Maverick.
Right animal, wrong car. He never owned a Pinto. He'll be sure to let me know that I should say that. There were times I just remember he would try to start that thing 50 times before it went. You had to do it just right, and you had to time it, and it would start and then die. And I remember sometimes he could go out and get it right away. Other times he'd be out there for 5 minutes.
Many of those cars had personalities.
Yeah.
I wonder, are there certain cars you love because a certain person drove it?
He's going to kill me when he listens and hears me say Pinto when I meant Maverick.
He's like, it was a Maverick.
Oh.
And then you're going to clarify, and there it is.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
I bet think about that. Are there cars that you like just because your family had one, and if your neighbor had it, it'd be like, it's junk.
Or hate. Yeah.
Yeah, things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember our neighbor had a Maverick, like a 72 Maverick, when we were in Michigan. I didn't like that car. It was kind of a old pile. It wasn't much. But boy, when I saw that girl the first time in the Maverick in Texas, I was thinking, I got to hold it. Even to this day, when I see an old grabber Maverick, I think of Lynn Yost from Longview, Texas.
Cordoba. That was me. And then I liked it because of it, and then I hated it. Let's talk to Rob. You're on the Under the Hood show. Rob, what can we do for you?
Hi, guys. Love the show. I was listening here a little while ago, and I heard you guys talking about battery issues, so I thought I'd call in and give you a little question on my daughter has a 2017 Subaru Legacy, and we initially bought the car a couple of years ago. It had about 75,000 miles on it. Great car, don't get me wrong. But every time we leave the keys in the ignition overnight, the battery goes dead. You pull the keys out, there's absolutely no issue. I've cleaned the battery cables. I've replaced the battery. I've had it down to my mechanic in Canton. He's tested the draw on it. He said there was a little bit of a draw, but not enough to really be concerned of. I was just wondering your guys' thoughts on if that would be problematic down the road.
Take the key out of the car. Don't leave it in there. A lot of these. That's supposed to do that. You will have a draw because it keeps circuits activated. The remote keyless entry, the chip in the ignition. And if you look in the owner's manual, it's probably going to. I believe that one specifically says remove the keys and keep them at least 3 feet away from the body of the car.
We have one with a proximity fob that will keep the wheel well lights on interior forever if you leave the fob in the car.
Yeah, they're designed that way, so it's not just you or this car. And cars like Volkswagens and Audis, if you don't pull the key, if you turn the key off and then pull it out, you'll hear a loud click, and then you can put it back in and you're fine. But if you just turn it off, it keeps that thing. You've got one of those too, Chris. You leave that key in the ignition without pulling it all the way out and then putting it back in, it keeps it powered up.
Yeah,
to a certain point, enough to pull it down quicker than normal. I think your Volkswagen draws like 2 amps, which will kill it in about 3 days, 2 to 3 days, which is too fast.
Yeah, that's what kind of had me baffled is how fast it happens. And it's literally dead the next morning. So, I guess I was a little stumped on what was actually going on with it. But if this really isn't an issue and it's just a matter of pulling the key out of it, I guess so be it.
And you're going to need a new battery because what has happened is the first time it probably took a few days to kill it, and it ran the battery completely dead, which took half of its reserve capacity away. The second time it went even quicker, and then the third, fourth, and fifth time it was even quicker than that.
Sure.
So it's damaged that battery. So I'd be concerned, if she's like driving to school or something with it, and off in the winter, college, whatever it is, and the car is outside, it may not start even with the keys out of it after a few days because it's got such low reserve capacity if it's hard to start on a cold winter day. So I would swap out the battery in that and then just keep the keys out of the car.
And our friends at Clarios would remind you to make sure you get yourself an AGM battery.
They hold up so much better in the extreme cold climates. When you go out so my car with an AGM battery and my car with the same model engine, you go to start that thing when it's below zero, and the one with AGM cranks pretty quickly. The other one, you've got that cold weather drag that they have. And that's the difference in the construction of those batteries.
Rob, thanks very much for the call. Let's talk about that. Good timing on it because I actually had this conversation yesterday. My daughter dropped her off at college, and she parks in the parking lot, and we were discussing what to do, how to handle it when she's going to park it in the winter, and it might sit for maybe a couple weeks, but at least a couple days, I'm sure.
Do not stoke hot coals under the car.
No,
do not do that.
And don't go out and start it and run it for 2 or 3 minutes a day.
Right.
If you, let's say she parks the car, and this is great for anybody going back to school. If you park a car and you know it's sitting for 2 weeks, and you know you're going back home Friday night, weekend coming, Thanksgiving's coming up, whatever, you're going home Friday night, and they say, temperature's going to start dropping this week, and it's going to be 5 below zero when you go to take off Friday night or Saturday morning. Get in the car the day before when it's a little warmer out, start it up, go for a drive. Go for a 30-minute drive. Warm it up completely. Make sure that'll charge.
But I'll lose my parking spot.
Well, it'll get the battery fully charged up. It'll warm the car up. It'll get the fluids moving. Then the next day you got a much better chance of it firing up and getting where you're going.
That actually, when my son, his first year of college, he let the car, the same thing. It was sitting there and it was 30 below. They had 2.5 feet of snow. And he said, yeah, I had to buy a new battery because I let my car sit for like a week and a half. I'm like, what? Why? How'd you do? Well, it was such a good parking spot. I didn't want to walk in 30-degree weather or 30 below to get it. So
squatters'
I just
rights he had on that one. He wasn't moving for nothing.
And I said, well, you got a battery for it. It was worth it.
Oh, boy.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us.
How high would you guys climb to get a new vehicle?
Mount Everest.
Given to you.
Oh, good question.
Higher than the
what am I climbing?
Next slowest person, right?
You're climbing a climbing wall.
Oh, okay.
With a slight inversion to it.
I can tell you, 5 feet 6 inches.
Is that for sure the right measurement?
I think so, yeah. I don't think I'm getting much higher than that.
Well, I put on our Facebook page a link to a YouTube video, and it looks like a scary link because I didn't copy it right or something. It says content/YouTube or something. But on there is a video of the wall in Norway, 154 feet off the ground. Somebody climbed it to win a Ford Explorer, and they have that up on top of there. It's pretty cool. Check it out.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That'll do it for another hour of the Under the Hood Show. Thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, you can find us at underthehoodshow.com. For Russ Evans, Shannon Nordstrom, I'm Chris Carter. Thanks for listening to the Under the Hood Show.
It's the one
All
that
right,
says...
hold on. We got we're still on the stream now. We're going to pop on. Let me stop this for a second and go.
Oh, yeah, still here.
We got a great phone call that we want to play that we didn't want to play on the show because it's kind of self-serving, but it's pretty great. Hold on a second. Would it be where? It's over here, right? Oh. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Go here. Oh, right there. Okay. This is, hold on. We're all right there. Is that it? Let's see.
Hello. I just want to tell you.
No, that's not it. Okay.
That's the lady, wasn't it?
So, all right. So go sit over there. Let's see if I can find it here.
1.6. 4 down.
Okay. Got it.
That should be the one.
All right. You want to set this up at all?
I hope that's right. I don't know. She called and we thought it was fun.
This was what Russ, when I walked into the studio today, this is what he hit play on and played for me. So this call came in.
I haven't heard this yet. This should be good.
866-594-4150.
Hello, my name is Jamie Matus, and I'm calling from Yuma, Arizona. I wanted to, well, I don't have a question per se. I just wanted to say that I'm a real big fan of this show. My husband and I listen to you, and if you do decide to play this on the radio, I did want to give a shout out to my husband. Hi, honey. I'm on the show. Anyways, that's pretty much it. I don't have any questions. I just hope you guys Have a very nice day. Bye.
That was awesome.
I feel like I need
Thank
a
you.
cigarette after
That
that.
was great.
It was great. I was listening through. We get lots of calls off the air, and we call some people back, and we get some people that are complaining about cars or whatever they've got, and like, okay, and then you get some weird calls like news and hang up calls, just stuff it's not even for the show, and you're like, ugh.
Extended warranties.
Yeah, can't we get some? We'd like to sell you an extended warranty. Like, this is an automotive show. You're not selling me an extended warranty. And then I got this, and I
That's
smiled. Awesome. I thought that was great. So
Thanks for
you.
being a hoodie. Wow.
Thank you for listening to the show. But you know what you missed? You didn't give me your name, or you gave me your name, but you didn't give me your phone number.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't see you on the hoodie fan club, so I can't send you a free hoodie or
Call
one
us
for your
back,
husband
Jamie.
either. So if you call us back, then we know you listened to this on the air and you heard it.
There you go.
But I'll get a free hoodie for you and your husband. So you need to get a hold of us.
And you can't just call now and say how much you love the show.
No, you can't, and you can't imitate that.
You can probably do it in like 6 months, and we'll
know
forget.
we'll know who you are. Yeah.
So there you go. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. Thanks for hanging with us on the stream and being a part of the Under the Hood
Hey,
show.
look, it's in HD today.
Oh yeah,
Finally got that thing.
We got everything upgraded.
We had a little glitch, so we had to broadcast in SD for the last, well, I don't know, the last 20 shows, but we got that little thingy switch now, so it even looks better up there, doesn't it?
It looks really good,
I think
Russ.
so, yeah.
And when you look at this camera right now with Russ froze on the screen, there now he's gone, but that's the man. He's the one that made this studio possible with his own hands, with his own brain. His own eyes. Michelle, his wife, patiently waited by his side as he had countless hours up in the studio. But when we talk about the studio,
hey, you know what we could do?
Just let me finish this thought, Russ. Just let me finish this thought.
I'll turn his mic off. He's not going to want to hear any of this.
No, he's probably not. But most people would call a company and they would hire an engineer to come in, or they would call a company and they would, pay a consultant, or something like that to tell you what you need.
I'm cheap.
He became the consultant, the engineer, and the installer.
Yeah.
On this project. And talking to the people that you met in the industry that gave you information, mentors, people you talked to at different companies that asked questions that were very helpful to you, some that weren't helpful to you that you knew to go a different direction. But we're able to figure out how to do this. And now he's talking about adding in these extra PTZ cameras to zoom in and zoom out. We had to replace a board, some software and a board to make that all work. Eventually we'll have a guest camera in here and different things, but we're still working on building this right now. So a couple of people had complained about, the stream quality, or we've been choppy in and out. This is a work in progress on the video side of things. The audio side of things we've been doing for years and years and years. We got that. We know what's going on there. But the video side, we're learning.
And here's what I have to say. I want to pile on Russ a little bit more here. There were people that we talked to about this studio to give us the info that we were looking for. And they said they could do this much of it, but what we wanted to do was beyond their realm.
Yep.
And we talked to several people who said, well, I can help you with this or I can help you with that. And because we couldn't find the person who could do it all, Russ just learned it all and read the books and did the thing. I mean, so yeah, good job, Russ.
Oh, it was nuts. Yeah, usually our glitches come from it's perfect when we go on the air, and then we go at the break, we say, oh, we should change this and see if we can test this. Then we go, oh, what did we screw up? Don't touch it anymore. We're really going to mess it up for the next one. So let's just leave it like it is. And then people are going, hey, this is fading out. It's doing this today.
Well, I mean, when it gets down to the reality of what we do here, we are a radio show to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Then the radio show became a podcast also. And so now the radio show, we're doing a live show for 2 hours that is going on to the great station here in Sioux Falls, AM 1320, and also 107.9 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, our home station. That is getting streamed live. And then we're capturing all that for not only the podcast, but also for all of our affiliates around the country, which number how many now?
240 something.
Almost 250. Almost 250 affiliates. So we're capturing that. Our producer, Doug, puts that together for the satellite downloads and also for the FTP sites that people use to connect to the show. And then the podcast, and now we've added this video piece. The reality is we're figuring this video thing out on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your relatives, jump on this video. We're going to keep adding content.
Yeah.
And we want to see that grow. But
it's live. It's cool. We could take this and film it and edit it and make it perfect and beautiful for you and then post it and you'd never know the difference. But we don't want to do that. We want to make it live.
And that is one thing, too. I've had conversations with a couple people. When we're doing something, when you're watching the stream live, when you're watching our YouTube or Facebook feed, we're live, like you said, we're live on the radio. So something that's going wrong or something that we can see, we might know that there's a technical glitch. We can't really do anything.
Because we got to keep our radio going.
Yeah, because we are live on the radio. So just the heads up when that stuff's going on. And I can see the comments or sometimes I'll even reply and say, yeah, we're working on it. But yeah, we don't have the luxury to go back and start over. And
we should take this
reset.
little segment and just chop it out and just throw it up there as just another, a little behind the scenes with under the hood. Just put that up there as a little piece.
That's a good idea. And kudos to Russ over there.
Yeah, big time.
And we had one expert come in and help us. Who did the acoustician, Dr. Ronald Stoneback.
An acoustician.
The coolest of all the things you did. I'm sorry, but when we were here with him and he was showing us the sound panels and how it changed, that was the most amazing part of it all to me. As someone who spent the last 30 years in a room with soundproofing, to watch him soundproof it and make it work, that was the coolest thing ever. It was amazing.
You know what I think is pretty neat? Is that now since this is mostly done, we've still got a lot of fine tuning Russ wants to do, but mostly done. The people now that are coming in to look at it that have been in the industry for years and years and years, and they want to see the studio and how we did it, and they're like, who did this?
Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to help you do it because I don't want to do it again.
Russ, I've had that conversation with multiple people. Hey, who did your studio? Could he do ours? No. I don't think so.
Nope.
I don't think he can. No. So there you go. Good job, Russ. Thanks for the studio.
I'm racking my brain right now.
He's looking at something.
There's a wire I need to move.
Yeah.
We have a problem this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trying to run a schematic in my head.
That's a downside of Russ building the studio.
It absolutely is. Yeah, and you can see that on some of the live feeds. You can see him walking around or me and him talking off air. And
just push this button right here in the center.
Right, push it differently.
There
you go. That's the Under the Hood Show. Thanks, everybody. Thanks very much for watching and listening and being a part of what we've been doing here since 1990. We're in our 32nd year. Thanks very